Good underwriting is crucial when deciding whether or not to pursue a multifamily property. It's your game plan for real estate investing success. But if mistakes are made, it can cost you a lot of money. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 3 common underwriting mistakes and what you can do to avoid them. So make sure you hit the subscribe button right now so you don't miss more videos about building wealth through multifamily real estate. And if you don't know me, I'm Seth Ferguson, a 12-year real estate veteran, host of a real estate TV show, host of a real estate investing podcast, and I'm also the author of the real estate book, Sell for More. So let's get right into it and talk about the 3 common underwriting mistakes when it comes to multifamily real estate. Mistake number 1 that I see comes down to numbers. And are we using real numbers or are we using fairy dust numbers? And what I mean by that is oftentimes when a broker is selling a property, they will send over a pro forma, and that will have forward-looking projections that are in no way based in reality. If you're using the broker's projections in your modeling, that is a recipe for disaster because they aren't based on anything. They are rosy projections that are used to basically sell the property and show you what a best case unicorn scenario looks like. So what do you have to do? Well, you actually have to use real actual numbers. So I want to talk real quick about economic occupancy and physical occupancy. So economic occupancy is how much money is actually coming in, is being generated by the occupied units, versus physical occupancy is how many units are actually occupied. So oftentimes when we're talking about a property, this is a mistake that I see all the time, is somebody will say, oh, well, the property is 90% occupied. And they are talking about physical occupancy, how many units are physically occupied by tenants. But physical occupancy doesn't tell us whether or not that tenant is paying rent. This is why we have to look at economic occupancy. Economic occupancy tells us how many units are actually paying rent. Because let's say you have 100 units and 5 units aren't paying their rent, but they're physically occupied. If you just look at physical occupancy, that won't tell you. So we have to look at economic occupancy and use the real numbers. So dig deeper. If the broker sends you just a rough spreadsheet of numbers, ask to see more. What are the real numbers per unit? What units are not paying rent? Ask more questions, dig deeper, because the better information you use, the better numbers you're using in your modeling, the better result, the more accurate result you will get at the end of your modeling and in your spreadsheets. Number 2 is Capex. Capex is short for capital expenditure. This is the money that you will use to renovate, to reposition the property. And oftentimes I see a mistake being made is somebody will take a look at a property that they're interested in and they will just use a blanket statement, oh, I'm going to put down $10,000 per unit to renovate the units, without actually going through and creating a detailed scope of work, exactly what has to be done in each unit. Now, obviously, if you haven't seen the property yet, you're going to have your rough idea of what you want to do based on the information you have. But as soon as you get into the units and you start seeing what is there, what needs to be done, you need to modify your underwriting and actually come up with a true scope of work. And this is going to accomplish a couple things. Number 1, you're going to be able to have a really good idea of timelines, how long a project is going to take based on what you have to do to it, rather than just using a blanket statement, oh, $10,000 or $15,000, $20,000 per unit. That doesn't give you anything to work with, and it's not accurate. Garbage in, garbage out. Just like using real numbers up here for occupancy, we have to use a realistic Capex budget and a timeline for the work to be done, because time is money, especially when we're repositioning a property. So you need to come up with a true scope of work, and this gives you a rough idea for timeline, but it also allows you to get a realistic budget for labor cost. Labor cost is your highest expense when you're doing any sort of renovation. So once you have a detailed scope of work with exactly what has to be done in each unit, and especially for the exterior as well, you're able to go out and get accurate quotes from contractors because they know exactly what they are doing. If you just say, oh, well, Mr. Contractor, I've budgeted $10,000 or $15,000 per unit, how long will this take? They can't give you a real number. So again, that's going to affect your underwriting. If you're just using blanket numbers and just generalities, you're not going to have accurate underwriting, and this will lead to mistakes and money left on the table down the road. So when we're talking about Capex, do the work ahead of time. I just actually did a podcast interview with somebody, and we spoke about the importance of scope of work and how it is so important when you're building a realistic model in your underwriting and on your spreadsheets. So number one, use real numbers, and that carries over to number two, which is build an accurate scope of work for the Capex for what you have to do. The work you put in ahead of time will save you so much time, money, and headache down the road. So do the work ahead of time and come up with an accurate Capex budget. And number three is our exit cap rate. We know what the cap rate is when we acquire the property because we're in that market at the time. It is present, it is truth. But when we're doing our underwriting and modeling in all of our spreadsheets, we have to think about what the market could be like when we exit the deal. If we're projecting a 5 to 7 year hold, we are making forward-looking projections, guesstimates about the market and the market conditions when we have to sell the asset. And one of the things I see a lot, one of the mistakes, is people are too rosy with their future outlook. So let's say, for instance, we are acquiring a property and the cap we acquire the property at is 4.5% cap. A mistake I see a lot of people make is they will use a 4.5 cap for their exit cap rate. So after they've done their reposition of the property, they've implemented their value add plan, and they're saying in year 5, when they go to sell, they're also going to sell at a 4.5% cap rate. That's not being conservative because we don't know what the market's going to be like. So what you have to do is you have to paint a picture of the future market being choppier, being less good, being less favorable to sellers when you go to sell. And it's going to depend on your market. You're going to be looking at market conditions. How bad was the last slump? How bad was the past 2 recessions for your market? Look at the past 30 years. What has been the trend in terms of cap rates and property values in the high periods and the low periods? And that's going to give you a good indicator of where you should place your exit cap rate. So let's say you bought the property at one of the best times in the market in the past 20 years. You're not going to be using that exit cap rate for your modeling. You're going to choose an exit cap rate that is more in line with the historic cap rates for your market. So that could be maybe 5.25%. That's going to give you a lower property value in the future. But one thing you have to remember is spreadsheets can lie. Spreadsheets can change as you change your values. Spreadsheets are not tied to reality. That is why if you put garbage numbers in, you're going to get garbage numbers out. If you're being general with your Capex budget, you're not going to have an accurate underwriting model. If you're using rosy unicorn exit cap rates, your spreadsheet's going to look great, but in 5 years when you actually exit the property, the reality will be a whole lot different than your spreadsheet if you're not being conservative and looking at the historical patterns of your market. So this is definitely a mistake I see. People are being too optimistic with their exit cap rates and what they're projecting the future market to look like. You have to be a lot more conservative, look at how the market has reacted over in past downturns, and use that, let that guide you as you're looking at your future selling prospects. So in a nutshell, these are the 3 underwriting mistakes I see all the time. Not using real numbers, not being accurate with your Capex budget, and also being a little too rosy with your exit cap rate. So if you're interested in learning more about the deals I'm currently looking at, head on over to callseth.com and set up a free 20-minute phone call with me. And if you like this video, if you found this useful, hit the like button. It helps out the channel. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And until next time, happy investing.